You're my son's parasite, so arrogant. Divorce him and get lost. My mother-in-law sneers at me with a twisted smile. She has always disliked me, tormenting me and taking pleasure in my sadness. I've never complained and have always tried to please her. After all, she is my husband's mother and part of my family. It's too sad for family members who live together to hate each other. I've endured it all this time, but I can't take it anymore. If she wants me to divorce her son, I'll gladly do it. But the next day, my husband called me in a panic. And my mother-in-law would come to regret what she had done for the rest of her life. My name is Mary, and I have been working at a publishing company since I graduated from college. Even after giving birth to my daughter Rihanna, I hardly took any maternity leave and quickly returned to work, which is why I'm currently busy as the deputy editor-in-chief. I live with Rihanna, my husband Keith, and my mother-in-law Catherine. We used to live in an apartment with just Keith, Rihanna, and me until Keith's father passed away. After his death, Keith didn't want his mother to be alone, so we moved into his family home, and that's where we are now. At that time, I agreed to live together because Catherine was still a kind person. Thank you for living with an old lady like me. I've been so lonely since your father passed away. She would say this with a sad look, but now she's turned into a mean mother-in-law who bullies me at every opportunity. Hey, Mary. This shirt has a stain on it. Can't you even do laundry properly? Looking back, it's likely that Catherine was only well-behaved under the strict watch of my father-in-law. But now that he's gone, she's free to do as she pleases, becoming lazy and constantly nagging me. Her day starts with lounging on the couch after breakfast. I'm feeling a bit peckish. Maybe I'll have a snack. Before it's even 10 a.m., she's already munching on sweets while lying on the couch. Since she leaves all the housework to me, she hardly ever moves from the couch. I prepare myself and clean up breakfast while glancing at her lounging. Hey, Mary? Can you make me some tea? Despite how busy I am, she orders me around as if it's the most natural thing. I'll leave it here. I'm off to work now. I finish the morning preparations and cleaning, serve her tea, and head to work. Normally, one might express dissatisfaction towards their mother-in-law, but I've always been obedient. Mom, why do you always do whatever Grandma says? One day, Rihanna asked me with a puzzled look. Rihanna had noticed her grandmother bullying me for a long time and, now in her teenage years, dislikes her and sides with me. Sometimes, she even complains to Catherine on my behalf. Because she's your father's mother, and it's unpleasant to live together if we hate each other. If that happens, home won't be a place to relax. So, I thought it would be better if I just endured it. Mom, you're too kind. Well, I'll protect you in that case. Thank you, Rihanna. While Rihanna is on my side, Keith is not. Keith always sides with his mother, no matter what she does. Even if I show the slightest defiance, Catherine exaggerates and reports it to Keith. Mary was so cruel to me. Keith believes her lies without question and scolds me. How dare you treat my mother like that? Don't ever do it again. If you do, you'll have to leave. Because of Keith's attitude, I remain obedient to avoid unnecessary conflict. As a result, no one stops Catherine, and she continues to lounge on the couch and gain weight. I'm worried that her lifestyle will eventually cause health problems, but telling her that will only result in her complaining to Keith. So, I sigh quietly, making sure they don't notice, and pretend not to see or hear anything inconvenient. I thought these days would continue forever, but suddenly, everything changed. Catherine suddenly collapsed and was hospitalized. She collapsed when no one was home, and Keith, who happened to come back for something he forgot, found her. If he hadn't come back, it could have been much worse, and Keith, in shock from his mother's collapse, took it out on me. If you had been a stay-at-home wife, this wouldn't have happened. Keith yells at me, half crying, when I leave work early to rush to the hospital. I understand he's upset about his mother, but his outburst is too selfish. The reason I had to return to work right after giving birth to Rihanna is because of Keith's low earnings. Keith's income fluctuates greatly based on his job performance. He could earn a lot if he wanted to, but he always finds excuses and doesn't take his work seriously. With his earnings alone, we couldn't make ends meet, so I've been working hard all this time. I had explained to Keith that I work because of our financial situation. But he seems to have forgotten that. I wanted to say, if you want me to be a stay-at-home wife, then you should earn more, but I bit my tongue, thinking it would be a waste of time to argue. When Catherine was brought in, she was semi-conscious, but her condition improved later. However, the initial tests didn't reveal the cause, so she was admitted for further examination. While Mom is in the hospital, you take care of things, okay? I'm busy with work. Keith ordered me arrogantly after completing the admission procedures. I'm busy with work too, but now isn't the time to argue. Welcome back. How's Grandma? She's conscious, so she'll be okay. But they don't know the cause yet, so they're running more tests. When I got home, Rihanna greeted me with a worried look. What's okay about it? Keith grumbled, passing by us and taking his frustration out on me. Rihanna glared at Keith with a cold look and then immediately turned her attention back to me. He's just going to dump everything on you, right? I'll help with the housework while Grandma is in the hospital. But you have your club activities, don't you? Rihanna is part of the volleyball team and is very dedicated, having competed in the national tournament last year. She wants to go pro and is busy every day with practice and studying. I didn't want to interfere with her schedule, so I tried to refuse, but Rihanna, looking a bit angry, retorted. Mom, you're trying to overdo it again. The tournament is over and we're on break, so don't worry about it. Rihanna, thank you. I almost cried from my daughter's kindness, but I quickly held back the tears and smiled at her. With such a caring daughter, I thought I could get through this difficult time. Mary? Buy me some snacks. Catherine, who had regained consciousness, went back to her demanding ways, ordering me to bring her snacks despite being on a restricted diet. You can't do that. You have dietary restrictions. I don't care. I told you to buy me snacks. Go get them now. Catherine, stressed from the confined hospital life, yelled at me irritably. When I refused, she turned red with anger and threw a nearby plastic cup at me. Ouch! The cup was light plastic, so it didn't hurt much. If it had been glass, I might have been injured. But Catherine wouldn't have cared if it had been glass. Sorry, but I'm leaving now. Hey! Don't you dare run away! As I couldn't take it anymore and started to leave, I overheard the nurses talking at the nurses' station. It's so noisy. Is it Catherine again? That woman is so troublesome. She sneaks out of her room to buy snacks from the store. They found them hidden under the bed, right? No matter how many times we warn her, she doesn't listen. Isn't it her own fault for ending up hospitalized? Hearing the nurses' conversation, I felt my face heat up with shame. It's not just me, Catherine is causing trouble for everyone in the hospital too. I hoped the test results would come quickly so she could be discharged. But my hopes were quickly dashed. A few days later, the test results revealed that Catherine needed a liver transplant due to a disease caused by her years of unhealthy living. We'll do a donor test immediately. You should get tested too, Keith urged in a panic. Keith's results showed that he wasn't a match. Expecting the same for myself, I took the test too. To my surprise, I was a match. What do you want to do? Will you go through with the transplant? The doctor asked me calmly when I rushed to the hospital alone after hearing the results. Normally, I would nod. But at that moment, I couldn't give an immediate answer and could only manage to say, I need some time to think. Why didn't I just say yes immediately? I wondered, feeling a growing unease in my heart. I feel restless. Maybe I should go to the hospital's coffee shop to take a break, I thought, and started walking, only to run into Catherine by chance. Catherine. What are you doing? She was holding large plastic bags in both hands, filled with snacks. To avoid suspicion from the store clerk, she had changed out of her hospital gown into regular clothes and snuck out to buy the snacks. Despite repeated warnings from me and the nurses, she hadn't changed at all. "Since you wouldn't listen to me, I had to buy them myself. You're such a useless daughter-in-law." She insulted me as usual and then extended her hand towards me. "What is it?" "Your hand. Pay for these, will you? I had to use my own money because you wouldn't buy them for me. Hurry up and pay." Not only had she bought prohibited snacks, but she was also demanding I pay for them. Feeling dizzy, I couldn't help but hold my head. "I'm not paying. Return those snacks to the store right now." "What? Are you crazy? I just bought them. I'm saying this for your health." But Catherine didn't listen at all and started shouting at me. "You're just saying that to forbid everything and enjoy seeing me suffer, aren't you? You're such a terrible daughter-in-law. You always do things to annoy me. Do you enjoy it that much? That's not true." I couldn't help but shout back at Catherine, who was playing the victim. She looked shocked. I had never raised my voice at her before, and even I was surprised, quickly covering my mouth with my hand. Taking a deep breath to calm down, I spoke to her in a quiet voice. "If you keep eating snacks, it will harm your health. Don't you want to recover and be discharged as soon as possible? If so, please listen to me, even just a little." But Catherine, twisting her mouth into a smirk, responded. "Huh? Who do you think you're lecturing? You're an arrogant parasite. Get divorced and disappear." At that moment, I heard something snap inside me. After that snapping sound, I felt all the pent-up emotions overflowing. Up until now, I had never retaliated no matter what was said to me. We became family by chance, and I didn't want to escalate things and foster hatred between us. If I endured without resisting, things would remain calm. I had been putting up with everything to protect my family. But I realized I couldn't endure anymore. At that moment, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I turned to Catherine and smiled. "All right, understood." Seeing me suddenly become compliant, Catherine looked surprised. I turned my back on her and quickly left. "Things are about to get busy," I murmured with a smile as I stretched outside the hospital. The next day, I wasn't at the house we had been living in but at another place. I had taken the day off work due to various circumstances, and I was busy running around because of it. That night, Keith called. "Hello." "Hey. Where are you?" Keith's yelling made me pull my phone away from my ear. Recently, Keith had been staying at the hospital a lot with his mother, and he probably didn't realize until this late that I hadn't returned home. "What are you going to do with that information?" My unexpected response seemed to surprise Keith. He was silent for a moment but quickly continued. "Oh, you're the donor match for Mom, right? I saw the test result paper on the table. Get back here and prepare for the transplant surgery." Listening to Keith's panicked voice, I remembered leaving the test result paper the doctor gave me on the table. "Well, it's no longer needed, so it doesn't matter," I thought as I slowly responded. "No." "What?" Keith sounded deflated at my refusal. I then dropped a bombshell on him. "Catherine told me to get divorced and disappear, so I intend to do just that. I'm divorcing you." "What? Divorce? What are you talking about?" The confident tone Keith had moments ago was now clearly panicked. Yes, I had left the house I had lived in for years, planning to divorce Keith. Yesterday, after returning from the hospital where Catherine was admitted, I started packing my things. Rihanna was still at school, so I explained the situation when she came home. "Rihanna, I'm really sorry. I'm planning to divorce your dad and leave this house, but you." I intended to respect Rihanna's wishes and would give custody to Keith if she wanted to stay. But Rihanna nodded firmly and responded before I could finish. "Got it. Then I'll pack my things too." "Oh. Are you sure?" I was braced for a reaction when I mentioned divorce. But contrary to my expectations, she accepted it so readily that I felt all the tension I hadn't realized I was holding release. Rihanna, oblivious to my reaction, spoke nonchalantly. "Of course. I'm sticking with you, Mom. Now that it's come to this, I'll be clear, you're the only one I consider my real family." Really? But Grandma was good to you. Although Catherine despised me as her daughter-in-law, she seemed to adore her granddaughter and didn't treat Rihanna the way she did me. But Rihanna answered with a frown. "Grandma tried to get me on her side to bully you together, Mom. Even though I kept saying I was on your side, she was relentless. She also kept trying to make me treat her using my allowance. Honestly, living with her has been pretty stressful." Hearing this, I was surprised and also frustrated with myself for not noticing. While my daughter was suffering, I thought enduring everything alone would keep the peace, ignoring the reality. "I'm sorry, Rihanna." "Why are you apologizing, Mom? Come on, let's start packing. Dad's probably not coming home tonight anyway. Packing for two is a lot of work. Can we finish it all today?" I had the same concern, so I called my parents for help. My parents live with my brother and his wife. Unlike Catherine, they aren't mean, and I have a great relationship with my sister-in-law. She isn't very close to her biological parents and considers mine as her own. I explained everything over the phone to my family. "So, I need help packing. Where am I moving?" "I don't know yet. I plan to move the stuff into a rental storage and stay at a hotel for now." "What? We can come to your place?" "That would be a huge help." My sister-in-law, who answered the phone, suggested we stay with them. She said we could keep our stuff there and stay as long as needed. Grateful for the offer, I accepted, and with the help of my family, we packed up everything that day. We moved our belongings to my parents' house, and I took the day off work to unpack. My brother and his wife don't have children and adore Rihanna like their own daughter. My parents also adore their granddaughter and even said we should stay there permanently. Rihanna loves my brother's family and my parents, and she was in high spirits yesterday. Thanks to my supportive family, the move and temporary housing went smoothly, and all that's left is to divorce Keith. "So, I'm asking for a divorce." Keith, clearly not expecting this, was shocked and listened to my explanation in silence. After a brief pause, he snapped back to reality. "Are you kidding me about the divorce? Just come back now and give Mom your liver." Did he even hear what I said? I wondered. I said I wanted a divorce, so why should I go back to that house? "No way. Why should I go back? You're my wife. You have a duty to help my mother. Are you going to abandon her while she's suffering from this disease?" The way he insulted me reminded me so much of Catherine. With a sigh, I dropped another bombshell on Keith. "About that. I already told the doctor yesterday that I'm withdrawing as a donor." "What?" "Yesterday, after leaving Catherine, I didn't go straight home. Instead, I went to see her doctor. I informed him that I was declining to donate my liver. Even if someone is a match, they can't be forced to donate a liver transplant against their will, even if it's the daughter-in-law." You refused the transplant surgery." Keith's voice trembled over the phone. I hesitated for a moment when making this decision, knowing it meant leaving someone who could be saved. Keith immediately showered me with insults. "My mother's life is on the line. Do you understand what you've done?" "Yes, I understand." "Then why?" Still pressing, Keith received a cold response from me. "Your mother rejected me. She insulted me in front of others, calling me a parasite and telling me to divorce and disappear. So, I'm doing exactly as she said." Keith hadn't informed Catherine that she needed a liver transplant. He had told the doctor and me to keep it a secret, fearing she would be shocked. Had she known she needed my liver and that I was a match, Catherine might have temporarily feigned kindness to me, only to return to her old ways once she recovered. Mom didn't know you were the donor match. Knowing or not knowing, calling someone a parasite is wrong. Besides, after she repeatedly insulted me, calling me trash and worthless, why should I save her? I'm not that kind. Keith was speechless at my words. I had never used such strong words to talk back to Keith before. He seemed quite confused, facing this kind of response from his wife for the first time. Moreover, there's a risk to me in the transplant. Why should I take that risk for someone I detest? Catherine's condition is largely due to her lifestyle choices. I warned her many times, but she chose to ignore me and do as she pleased. Why should I risk my life for someone who ignored my warnings and insulted me? The pent-up frustration erupted, and I found myself shouting. I hadn't realized how much resentment I had bottled up. I unleashed my anger on Keith. And you never helped me when Catherine bullied me. Only Rihanna knew everything and helped me. You never did. Rihanna is my only family. You and Catherine are not my family. After a while, I heard Keith's sobbing on the other end. Even if you felt that way, why didn't you at least complain to Mom? You should have told her off. Yes, I used to complain about it in the beginning. And you know what happened? She lied to you and told you that I had said terrible things to her and cried. You didn't believe me at all, but you believed her words and scolded me. Don't you even remember? At first, I did resist Catherine's bullying verbally, but she would always turn Keith against me, making him scold me. I remember how Catherine would smile twistedly, watching Keith berate me while she enjoyed the scene. Remembering that smile still makes my stomach churn. So, I gave up resisting, thinking it was futile. I convinced myself it was better for the family not to fight, fooling myself with such excuses. I'm done with that life. I want a divorce. I reiterated my intention, but Keith seemed determined to resist. I will never agree to a divorce. Oh, really? Then I'll hire a lawyer. A lawyer? Isn't that a bit much? Realizing he didn't grasp the reality of the situation, I sighed in exasperation. If I don't go that far, you won't divorce me. No matter what it takes or how much it costs, I want to divorce you. Finally, it seemed my seriousness got through to Keith as I heard him gasp. He fell silent for a while before speaking in a trembling voice. I won't let you take Rihanna. How dare you take her away? She's my daughter and Mom's beloved granddaughter. You're a kidnapper. I'll definitely get custody. Rihanna came with me of her own free will, but Keith wouldn't believe that. As I wondered what to do, Rihanna suddenly snatched my phone from behind. Hello? Dad? It's Rihanna. Holding the phone to her ear, she wore an emotionless expression. Rihanna. Come back right now. Forget about that horrible mother and live with Dad and Grandma. Keith's loud voice was desperate enough to be heard from a distance. But Rihanna responded coldly. I absolutely don't want to live with you and Grandma. You're only trying to get custody so you can make me do all the housework since Mom's gone. Too bad. I won't do what you want. No. I wouldn't make you do that. Rihanna sighed heavily, cutting him off. When Mom was busy with work, you made me do housework all the time. Have you forgotten? How convenient for you. I was shocked to hear this, not knowing it had happened. Anger towards Keith and Catherine surged within me, causing me to clench my teeth. I'm really happy that Mom decided to divorce. Of course, I'm staying with her. You and Grandma can live together happily. Wait, Rihanna. Keith pleaded, but Rihanna ignored him and handed the phone back to me. So, I'll be taking custody. No. I can't accept that. Please reconsider. If you leave, I'll. Whatever happens to you or Catherine is none of our business. Now, I'll hang up. We have no time to waste on you. Keith was still saying something, but I mercilessly ended the call. Catherine, whom I refused to donate my liver to, eventually found another donor, and the transplant was successful. However, her post-surgery behavior was poor, leading to complications. Hearing this made me angry on behalf of the person who helped her. Even if something happened to her, I wouldn't feel any sympathy. Rihanna, too, showed a mix of anger and disgust when she heard about it. The nurses and doctors repeatedly tried to stop Catherine's overeating, but she wouldn't listen, yelling, "It's my body. I can do what I want." She had begged the doctors to save her, but she quickly forgot their kindness. Even if I had been her donor, she would have reverted to her old self. I was truly glad I refused. Catherine's behavior became such an issue that she was transferred to a psychiatric ward after starting to physically lash out at the nurses. Keith, already struggling with their bills and his low salary, faced even greater financial difficulties. He barely managed to take care of Catherine, whose poor treatment from him was unbearable. The woman who had publicly demanded my divorce now called me from the hospital's public phone, begging me to return. "Please, come back. Keith can't take care of me." You do realize that Keith and I are currently negotiating our divorce, right? "We're still married, so you're my family." Hearing Catherine's nonsensical claim, I firmly rejected the idea of family. "After all the bullying, you call me family when it suits you? Disgusting. I refuse to be family with someone like you." With that, I hung up. Since I had already entrusted the divorce negotiations to my lawyer, there was no need for further contact with Keith or Catherine. I decided to get a new phone, which meant no more calls from them and a more comfortable life for me. Eventually, Catherine was transferred to another hospital, worsening Keith's financial situation. He ran out of money and had to sell the house, but it was an old house far from the city center, so he got very little for it. Shortly after hearing this news, my divorce from Keith was finalized. Keith, overwhelmed by his circumstances, no longer had the bandwidth to contest the divorce. Now, free at last, I'm living happily with Rihanna, my parents, and my brother's family. Initially, I planned to stay with them only for a short while, but they've told me I can stay as long as I want, and I'm even considering making it my permanent home. Fortunately, my parents' house is within Rihanna's school district, so there were no major changes to our lives, and it's also conveniently close to my office. It's a very comfortable place to live. As I listen to Rihanna's thoughts and consider our future, I plan our lives step by step. "See you later. I'll be late today because of club activities." "Got it. Do your best. Take care and have a good day." Every day, I send Rihanna off with a smile, secretly praying that this peaceful life continues as long as possible. Wow, oh, it's new and beautiful. Looks like a nice, usable house. This is our cherished new home, meticulously planned and built by my husband and me, a newly married couple. It was our parents-in-law, both of them, who carelessly dropped their muddy, old suitcase right in the middle of our meticulously cleaned living room. To our surprise, they were moving from today. They announced they lived with us. I was shocked and confronted my husband. "Why is this happening without any discussion?" "Don't worry, my mom's here to help with the housework, right? We'll get used to it soon, and supporting each other as a family is what matters. There's no problem." My husband, heavily influenced by his parents, didn't seem to consider my refusal at all. He grew up in a grand, old American-style house, and frankly, he has always seen the role of a wife as nothing more than a convenient housekeeper. A viewpoint shared by his parents. I had endured weekly dinners at their house, where my father-in-law would openly call me a disobedient woman. Furthermore, we were short on rooms, so my husband ordered me to vacate mine. "You can sleep in the yard, it's lucky for you since you won't have to deal with my parents," he said with a smirk. Holding back my tears, I rushed into my room. And then, when I returned, dragging a heavy suitcase just as burdensome as my in-laws, my husband and his parents were shocked. I announced loudly, "I'm going back to my parents' house, enjoy yourselves." I am Mirabelle. Currently, I work in the product development department of a health food company. I'm 32, and my husband, Tom, also 32, works in the sales department of the same company. Tom is a very thoughtful person, a hidden gem in any team he joins, always playing a supportive role. He's a top performer in our department, a husband I'm proud of. Our first meeting was at a departmental mixer. Dressed up, I caught his attention with the antique ring on my little finger. He was intrigued by my hobby of collecting antique jewelry. He admitted to thinking rings were just flashy, gem-studded pieces from his family's collection, so I introduced him to more vintage designs. Soon, we started going out for meals after work and on weekends, quickly progressing to a relationship, followed by a proposal in less than 6 months, celebrated by many colleagues and superiors. We had a dream even before marriage: building our own home. Our goal was to contribute equally, take out a loan, and create a small but detailed home of our own. I'd like a spacious living room, maybe a yard, thinking of kids and pets in the future. We might not have a big budget, but I'll work harder than ever, save more, do whatever it takes. We had many requests about the house. We have a certain location in mind, but we need to decide on the land based on transportation, shopping, imagine when we have children, the design of the exterior, and other points that each of us has that we can't miss. We had meticulously planned and worked tirelessly with a design firm to create our dream home. Though the plot was introduced by a real estate agent near my parents' house, they are quite kind and won't trouble you. No worries, they were nice during our visit. But your mom's cooking skills are a bit intimidating. His family used to own a lot of land in the area. Now mostly sold off, except for their residence. Luckily, due to these connections, we got priority in securing our plot. Since we searched through connections, the location ended up being a plot close to my in-laws' house. I didn't have many opportunities to meet my in-laws outside of formal greetings. Because of this, I felt the need to be cautious and was quite nervous about how to interact with them. However, my in-laws always seemed cheerful and kind, and they appeared genuinely happy whenever I visited. My father-in-law was the breadwinner with a strong sense of responsibility, and my mother-in-law was a dedicated homemaker. When they heard about our plans for a new home, they were excited and supportive, and I thought they were wonderful parents-in-law. As our house plans progressed to the construction phase, my husband and I decided to visit his parents' house. Their house was nearby, though not next door. We wanted to make a good impression early on. Their house was a large, traditional American-style home. And I was always overwhelmed by its size. They greeted us with smiles as usual. Building your own house is a big step, but I'm proud of my son. Our house is old, so a new, clean home is something to admire. Building a house is exciting, isn't it? Mirabelle, we're looking forward to it too. That's how my in-laws both gave me their support. Our current residence was a bit far from there. My husband, Tom, suggested, it's gonna be a while till the house is finished, but how about we spend more time together in the meantime? I readily agreed, of course, let's do that. Tom had a good relationship with his parents, and they were always up to date with his business trips and weekend plans. So, we started getting invited over on weekends that coincided with our days off. The visits were for simple reasons like going to the mall or having meals at their home. However, I felt there was a limit. For example, I would get calls from my mother-in-law on a Friday night saying, "Mirabelle, thank you for the last time. Next time, could you drive us to look for a purse as a gift for a friend? It would be a big help. Also, we're inviting you over for lunch on Sunday. We're getting some nice fish, so bring Tom along. Could you bring a dish? I'm good at fried and stewed dishes and salads, so please bring something else. And about your clothes." She not only talked at length, but also filled up our weekend schedule and made specific requests. I wondered if dealing with in-laws was always this demanding and secretly asked my friends for advice, but all I got were comments blaming the oddity of my in-laws. I began to dread visiting them and felt increasingly trapped. As my work in the product development department got busier and the frequent visits to my in-laws' house fueled my mistrust. One day, I mustered the courage to decline over the phone. I feel bad visiting so often, and I also want to have some quiet time on the weekends. I'm embarrassed to say, but with work, I can hardly keep up with chores at home. I tried to deflect the conversation, but my mother-in-law was unyielding. Insisting, "Don't be shy, we're family now," and I couldn't escape that weekend's plans. Reluctantly, I went to my in-laws' house with a heavy heart. To make matters worse, my husband knew I had tried to decline the invitation. Throughout the car ride, he scolded me. Mom was sad, Dad might say something, blaming me. At their house, with dishes spread across the dining table, the topic came up again. I felt like I was sitting on pins and needles. Then my father-in-law pointed at my mother-in-law and said, "Why don't you go help out? It's not too much for her. That would be too much for Mom." "That's not a problem. She can just finish the housework during the week and then come clean up your apartment. She's a homemaker, after all, she's got free time." I was surprised by his suggestion and even more so by his tone. His attitude towards my mother-in-law, a homemaker, was filled with misconceptions and harsh assumptions. I was at a loss for words, feeling like he was a boss issuing orders rather than a family member. What was terrifying was that my mother-in-law just smiled and nodded, as if my husband's instructions were the most natural thing in the world. I felt a chill down my spine. Thankfully, I managed to fend off the suggestion that she take over our household chores. In stark contrast to her compliance, my repeated refusals made my father-in-law mutter, "What a disobedient daughter-in-law." I could feel my irritation rising, and my heart raced. My father-in-law quickly became sullen, and my mother-in-law scrambled to cater to his needs. The tension in the air was suffocating, and I quietly resolved to stop visiting my in-laws. The following week, when my mother-in-law called, I tried to excuse myself, saying, "I have other plans and can't come." If the new house was completed and they had to live near their in-laws, they would have had to see each other every day, not just every week off. The horrible thought filled me with dread. Why not? Haven't you finished your chores? Maybe it would have been better if I had helped out, like my husband suggested. She persisted, but I had my response ready. "I have plans with a friend who attended our wedding. We're going out as a thank you. So, I can't come today, but I'll visit when our schedules align. I'll make sure to convey my thanks to my friend." I rattled off my excuse and managed to end the call. The promise was a lie, but feeling unsafe at home, I quickly left. From that day on, I found excuses to avoid visiting my in-laws. Despite this strained relationship, our new home was completed. My husband, Tom, and I were thrilled with our sparkling new house and took great care in cleaning every corner. However, not even half a month after moving in, my mother-in-law summoned me unexpectedly. Her tone was serious. "It's something I must tell you. I know you don't plan to come to our house on your days off, but this is something I just have to tell you." "Okay, I'll come right over," I replied, though it pained me to do so. Rushing over, I found my mother-in-law eager to explain the household chores at her home. The basics are daily sweeping of the entrance and garden. Normally it's just dry wiping, but on weekends we do a thorough mopping. Plus, there's shopping and managing the household budget. "Oh, you can change things to suit you." She smiled kindly, but I was baffled by her explanation. It was as if she was discussing how we would share chores if I moved in with them. "Wait a minute. Why are you telling me all this?" I wondered what she expected me to do with this information about cleaning supplies and kitchen use. When I asked, her face clouded over. "You married into our family, Mirabelle, so you need to follow our ways. Don't you know that yet? Don't you want to contribute to your husband's family?" Then she asked, "How long are you planning to keep working?" I was speechless, having had no intention of quitting my job. It seemed she expected me to eventually leave my job, become a homemaker, and help out with their chores. Stunned by this unexpected turn, I firmly stated, "If that's the case, I'm leaving. I understand my duties as a wife and will help out where I can, but my priority is my time with my husband. I have work in our own household chores, so I can't help out here." With that, I left my in-laws' house. I immediately protested to Tom, but he took his parents' side and wouldn't listen. I didn't marry into this family to do their housework, I said, but he just looked annoyed. Are you always this selfish? My parents can't be wrong. Can't you get along with them? I was speechless and could only stare back at him. I was shocked not only by the vast difference in thinking between me and my in-laws but also by my husband Tom's refusal to listen to my views. He's usually not like this, but when it comes to his parents, especially his father, he seems to change completely, adhering to whatever they say as absolute. The decision to build our own home was initially suggested by his father, who wanted to maintain good relations with a real estate agent through purchasing land. The word divorce involuntarily flashed through my mind. But with Tom frequently away on business trips, I was often left alone at home. Plus, there was the fact that we had just built our dream home. I decided to observe the situation a little longer, as long as I could keep a distance from his parents. However, I made it clear to Tom that I didn't want any involvement with his parents. The relationship with your family is quite different from a normal mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship. Honestly, I don't want any more involvement. I won't be visiting your parents' house for chores, and I have no intention of living with them. Please remember that. I expressed this earnestly. I expected him to get angry, but surprisingly, Tom backed down, saying, "Okay, I got it. I'll handle things with my parents from now on." A month later, on a weekend, I was preparing lunch at home. Then Tom, who had been out since morning, returned with multiple voices accompanying him. I was surprised to see my in-laws enter the living room with large bags. "Oh, it's so nice and clean because it's new. It looks like a great, user-friendly house," exclaimed my father-in-law with a loud laugh. Tom seemed proud as he showed them around the living room, carrying heavy luggage like carry-on cases and backpacks. When I confronted him, he began to say something unbelievable. He announced that his parents were moving in with us from today. What? Why? Without any discussion? I've been thinking about this for a while. Since Mirabelle doesn't want to deal with my parents, I've been mediating. Don't worry, my mom's here for the housework, right? We'll get used to it, and it's good to support each other, no problem. He said, as if he never doubted I would welcome living with his parents. I felt a sense of despair. I was foreseeing a difficult life living with in-laws whose perspectives were so different from mine. I was determined to avoid living with them, but apparently, our house and land had already been sold without my knowledge. The preparations for their move were made entirely behind my back. They only brought their immediate belongings, and their larger furniture was stored in a storage unit. I had just told Tom that I wanted to minimize interaction with his parents, and now I felt utterly betrayed. Why did you decide this without telling me? Why proceed unilaterally without any discussion? Don't you consider my feelings? This is about our future life as a family, we should have discussed it together. But Tom was indifferent. He looked at me as if I was a nuisance. But if my parents want to live with us, what can I do? Think of it as a trial period. Since he didn't want to be involved, I handled the sale and the moving preparations. A trial period? The house is already sold, what are you talking about? Doing this behind my back is like a betrayal. Complaining after marrying into the family? You're the wife, show some understanding and patience. This is my house. Tom snapped, his logic baffling me as he raised his voice. I was stunned. I realized that in his eyes, my thoughts and opinions seemed irrelevant. Ignoring me, he began to show his parents upstairs. Our house has 3 private rooms. Tom's study, my room, and our shared bedroom. We had planned to give my room to our future child. Wondering where he was guiding them, my husband then bluntly said to me, "Get your stuff out of the room." I wasn't surprised, but I was visibly upset. My mom will use your room. Dad gets the bedroom. Why don't you sleep in the yard? You don't want to deal with them, right? It was clear that if each of the in-laws were to use a room, there wouldn't be enough rooms available. The smirk on his face as he suggested I sleep in the yard made it clear this was a well-thought-out way to hassle me. I felt suffocated by the rejection from the man I had loved. While my father-in-law smirked at me in the background. Tom was clearly following his parents' instructions. It was conceivable that he was harassing me because he was told to do so. He chose to side with them, not to protect me. This realization brought a renewed sense of despair, and I could only look at him silently. As he opened my room and demanded me to hurry up, I felt like there was no point in arguing. I entered my room, grabbed the heavy suitcase I had prepared in advance, and left at a speed that took Tom by surprise. I'm going back to my parents' house. Enjoy yourselves, I told them. I had kept my belongings in order so that I could return to my parents' house at any time. Now, anything left in my room could be disposed of without concern. Tom and his parents seemed startled, not expecting me to leave, and they tried to stop me. My mother-in-law even accused me of pushing housework onto her, but I knew that was her intention all along. Having lived with such a father-in-law and with Tom before our marriage, it seemed to me that she had no love for her family. Instead of fighting back, she had hoped to find a new target in me, the daughter-in-law. Ignoring all their schemes, I headed back to my parents' house. Though surprised, my parents understood the situation and showed anger toward Tom and his parents. Feeling supported, I was relieved until Tom contacted me. He was apparently coming to my parents' house with his parents to take me back, saying, "I'll forgive you, so come back." Anticipating a discussion at my parents' house, I made a call to a certain place. With my parents present, the 6 of us sat around a table. Especially my father, upon hearing what I had gone through, glared at Tom and his parents with utmost anger. Yet, Tom and his parents showed no remorse. Instead, my father-in-law took the lead, accusing me of being an unreasonable daughter-in-law who wouldn't contribute to her husband's family. My father glared at them in disbelief. "Mirabelle, you should behave more sensibly as a wife. You're still working instead of dedicating yourself to your husband and his family. You should be grateful that we even tolerate that. And returning to your parents' house, who do you think you are? The complaints you have are nothing compared to the duties of a wife. Why don't you try harder and be more supportive at home?" My mother-in-law added, echoing my father-in-law's criticisms. With Tom interjecting, exactly what my parents are saying. The conversation in my parents' living room became increasingly chaotic. I tried to convey my feelings while enduring their words, but it only added fuel to the fire. Each time I spoke, their retorts grew more intense. Suddenly, my father spoke up. "I can't believe you're forcing her to live with you. She might be your wife, but she's still my daughter. If you're saying she's not good enough, we're happy to take her back. Let's go for a divorce." Encouraged by my father, I brought out the divorce papers that I had printed from a website before their arrival. My part was already filled out. All that was needed was Tom's signature. Seeing this, both my father-in-law and Tom started to get angry. "Don't be stupid. You think this is a solution? A wife should not think she can just divorce. Taking such extreme measures, you're a coward." My father-in-law yelled, while Tom, looking annoyed at me, followed. "We haven't even had a proper discussion yet. Can't you be a bit more rational? This is why I hate it when women can't have a logical conversation." They continued with their snide remarks, trying to destroy the family, huh? So arrogant, not caring about the place or situation. They said they wanted to discuss, but it was clear they weren't in a state to have a reasonable conversation. I had already given up on talking and was only focused on getting Tom to sign the divorce papers. But it wasn't just their terrible attitudes that led to this. "I have something to ask your mother," I said, pulling out my smartphone to show a video. My mother-in-law's face, who had been quiet until then, visibly changed upon seeing the screen. It was no surprise she recognized the content. It showed her opening drawers in my room. Since I had started refusing to do chores at their house and limited my interaction, I noticed items gradually disappearing from my room. The drawer contains a large box for antique jewelry, which was the conversation starter between my husband and me. I purchased them for their design, so overall, they are not very expensive, but some are valuable enough to be kept under lock and key. Stolen were not only the visibly expensive pieces of fine jewelry but also several antique rings and accessories. And then, the contents of the locked box. Each item is a treasured part of my collection, and the realization that someone has been breaking into my room sends a chill down my spine. I considered the culprit, but it seemed unlikely that my husband would target the antiques for monetary reasons. The prices vary, and since my husband, with whom I share household finances, has never reprimanded me, I've been freely collecting them. He knows I've been buying mostly inexpensive items. However, the disappearance of the jewelry with gemstones clearly indicates the motive was to cash them in. Could it be that someone was let into the house while I was away? Realizing someone had been entering my room, I bought a small camera and placed it hidden in the room. After setting it up hidden in the shadow of the furniture, it captured the culprit's image within just a few weeks. At a time when no one was supposed to be at home, the person who appeared in my room was my mother-in-law. Someone could enter without my knowledge only if my husband had lent them the key or given them a spare, most likely. My mother-in-law used it to target the times the house was empty, stealing small amounts of precious metals from the jewelry box. When I confronted her with this undeniable evidence, she turned pale and exclaimed, "I've already sold them, I can't give them back." My mother-in-law became frantic and almost in tears, not knowing if the items had been sold to someone else. When I said, "I will claim damages corresponding to the value," she shrieked, "That's a lie. No way." Although my collection was mostly inexpensive, it included some pieces from reputable stores. Among the stolen items were these high-end pieces. Probably, the locked and carefully stored items caught her eye. And their cash value must have been substantial. But this meant the claim amount was in the tens of thousands of dollars. An amount she couldn't afford as a homemaker. My father-in-law, trembling with rage, glared at me. Without reprimanding his wife for the theft, he suddenly snapped, "Don't mess around. You're going to sue over this trivial matter? If you've married into this family, you should listen. Instead of dressing up in toy-like trinkets, why don't you work on yourself more, maybe lose some weight?" My father-in-law, red-faced and yelling. It seemed to genuinely believe that once married into their family, I was their property. He was just angry that I wasn't complying with everything he said. "Enough with the jokes." He finally stood up, raising his hand towards me. I braced myself for the blow, but my father quickly stepped in, preventing it. Just then, the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the person. The person whom I had contacted. A lawyer specializing in divorce issues. I had been consulting with this lawyer since I first considered divorce, especially after the theft suspicions arose. He was an older, authoritative lawyer from a firm known for handling divorce cases effectively. His presence filled the room with a serious atmosphere, and Tom and his parents seemed diminished by the lawyer's authority. First, the lawyer explained that we would be seeking compensation from my mother-in-law for the theft. Then, he laid out the evidence of the unreasonable demands and treatment from Tom and his in-laws. Including the diary I kept for such incidents, recordings I had made, and the footage from the small camera, all of which were admissible as evidence. He explained that we could claim damages for the mental anguish they caused. When the topic of divorce and the ensuing financial settlement came up, Tom, in a panic, got up and began pleading with me. "Throw away this stupid idea of divorce, we're in love, aren't we? You don't seriously want to split up?" As he groveled, his parents chimed in, "That's right, rethink this, you can still turn back." It was clear they hoped I'd withdraw the divorce, but I felt it was a waste of time to even engage with them. "We're not in love anymore, so that's inaccurate. I genuinely want to split up. If necessary, I'll consult my lawyer as many times as needed, even if it takes a long time or we end up in court." My firm rejection made Tom slump in defeat. Deflated, perhaps due to the authority of the lawyer's title, Tom's parents also quieted down and grudgingly agreed to the divorce. When the lawyer asked my mother-in-law why she stole, the shocking truth emerged. She was a reckless spender, and after splurging on shopping, she found herself short on living expenses. Unable to tell her husband, she planned to borrow money from Tom. He was on a business trip, so he told her, "Use the spare key. There's money in the bedroom drawer, take it." She did, but then noticed the rings I left in the bedroom and thought there might be more. Rummaging through my room, she found the jewelry box and the locked box, which she quickly took to a locksmith. I lost the key, she lied to get it opened, took the contents, and replaced the empty box. Every time she was short on cash, she would sneak into our house and steal more. Hearing this, my father-in-law turned on her, calling her the lowest of thieves. Despite their insults, my parents ushered them out of the house, and they left in a loud commotion. I never went back to that house, leaving the disposal of the furniture to them. My ex-husband and his parents began living there. But due to the financial claims I made, they couldn't afford to pay, and the house and land were eventually seized. I heard from neighbors they moved to a small apartment and lived poorly. However, my ex-husband told me that his father had been leaving all the housework to his mother, burdening her and then blaming her for the theft, causing her to run away with most of the family's money. In a panic, my ex-husband called, asking if I knew anything. I had no contact with her, so I advised, "You should file a missing person report," and hung up. The two left behind did indeed report to the police. My mother-in-law is being searched for as a missing person, but so far, she hasn't been found. There's been no word from her, but I wonder if she will eventually be returned to my father-in-law and ex-husband. It seems that they are constantly bickering and fighting with each other now that they have no one to take care of them. Even at the company, I hear rumors about my ex-husband Tom, who is in a different department. Due to the significant decrease in his living standard, he's making more mistakes at work and his performance in the sales department has plummeted. Since he used to get work by being nice to everyone, his mistakes and missteps with clients have led to his reassignment to a less desirable department, famous for grueling tasks like telemarketing. He's becoming increasingly exhausted. Moreover, after committing a major mistake by sending confidential company information in an email to a client, he completely lost his footing. This became a big issue in the company, with various departments scrambling to take measures, and Tom was held accountable and penalized. Eventually, feeling uncomfortable, he chose to resign voluntarily, as I was informed by a well-connected colleague. As for my father-in-law, apparently, he too became more irritable at work due to his fatigue. His juniors and subordinates started complaining of mental distress, leading to his demotion for not being suitable for his current position. This hurt his pride, and he chose to resign in anger. Given his reputation, re-employment was difficult, and later on, Tom tearfully contacted me, saying, "We are living off our savings. Can you help us?" But I had no choice but to refuse. The alimony was already paid, and there was no reason to continue any relationship with them. I politely declined and then blocked their numbers. Finally free from them, I decided to change jobs to a company that had been offering me a good position, as I was growing weary of being known as the divorced ex-wife at my current job. Also, not wanting to rely on my parents indefinitely, I used the alimony to move into an apartment closer to my new workplace. My parents, though worried, respected my desire to be independent and saw me off. I make sure to keep in touch with them and spend time with them during long vacations. In my new environment, my life began to improve. I think I have recovered mentally, so much so that I can think positively. I would like to get married again if I have a chance. My name is Rachel, and I'm 38 years old. I got divorced 6 years ago and remarried 3 years back. Me, my first hubby Dan, and my current hubby, Lewis, we all worked together at Smith Foods. Dan and Lewis were like oil and water, always competing, but they both really gave their all for the company. After me and Dan decided to tie the knot, I quit my job. The next year, our little girl Julie came into our world. Our marriage was like a fairy tale, at least for the first 5 years. Then things started to go south. Dan fell head over heels for a gal 10 years his junior, named Natalie. He hardly ever came home, and it tore me up. Eventually, I decided to divorce him. I've been a single mom to Julie ever since. While Dan was off with his new flame, Lewis, bless his heart, reached out to me worried. We started talking, not just about Dan, and before we knew it, we ended up tying the knot. Lewis never let on that he was the big boss's son at the office. I didn't have a clue until after we got married. Turns out, my second marriage was like hitting the jackpot. Julie and I have been living the high life. Not long ago, we went skiing in Switzerland. Poor Julie had an accident and now she's in a wheelchair. While I was dropping her off at school, I saw someone at the gate. It was Dan. My ex, who left me for another woman 6 years ago. Thought remarriage was a miracle for you. But look at you now, back to a life of misery. It's almost funny. Then Lewis rolls up in his fancy car, and Dan's face just goes white as a sheet.
What? Lewis? Driving such a fancy car?
Lewis is the son of the president of Smith Foods. He's about to become the youngest president in the company's history. Talk about a plot twist, huh? I wanted to share the life journey that led me to this point of happiness.
The company's huge, isn't it? Didn't seem this big when we first interviewed?
It's a long-standing food company. It's still growing and listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Dan, Lewis, and I joined Smith Foods and were assigned to the PR department. On our first day, Dan wouldn't stop talking, and we planned to grab some drinks to get to know each other better.
Man, your French is incredible.
My dad's background is French. I was born and raised right here in the US.
Rachel, I heard you're also fluent in French. Did you grow up abroad?
I've always been fond of French. I studied it more in the Global Studies program at college.
Wow, I can't speak a lick of it, but somehow I still got hired. Guess I'm lucky.
Being in the same starting group, me, Dan, and Lewis would often go out for drinks. We got pretty close. But Dan, getting greedier by the day, started to see Lewis as his rival. Doesn't it seem like Lewis is the boss's pet? He's even on the cover of our PR magazine. Sure, he's good-looking with a tall stature. I can give him that. But a regular employee, acting like a model? And he's always in the spotlight at work, like he's the face of the company. If they gave me a chance, I could outdo him. I don't want to lose to him, not in work, not in anything. I don't think Lewis cares about winning or losing. He's just doing what's asked of him. He even said he's tired of being judged by his looks alone. Do you and Lewis ever go out for drinks, just the two of you? Well, if he invites me. Around this time, it seems Dan started to have feelings for me. I had a sense of it, but pretended not to notice as there were no clear words or actions from him. The three of us, Dan, Lewis, and I, grew closer both at work and in our private lives, inspiring and challenging each other. 2 years after joining Smith Foods, Dan asked me out.
What should I do? How should I respond?
Maybe I was being the villain here, but I talked to Lewis about Dan. If you don't dislike him, why not go out with him? I respect Dan and think he's a good guy. He could make you happy. Dan was a man of intense but transient passions. His tendency to get completely absorbed in something was somewhat frightening. But I gave an honest okay to Dan, who had expressed his feelings directly. Dan and I got married when we were 25. I left my job to focus on family life. It's a shame you're leaving. You had the potential to be a career woman. You're always attentive to details others miss, finishing tasks before they're even requested. It's really a waste. Thank you. You're the only one who appreciates me that way.
Contact me anytime if you need anything. Though, I think Dan will take good care of you. If he ever cheats, I'll be right there to give him a piece of my mind.
Lewis said lightly, a statement I would come to remember.
Dan, if you're going to be late, at least let me know. Dinner's going to waste.
Stop nagging.
It's because of your constant complaining that I don't want to come home. Don't forget, Julie has her school play tomorrow.
Tomorrow? I've got plans, but I can't make them.
What? I told you to keep your schedule free ages ago. Julie's looking forward to you being there.
6 years into our marriage. Our daughter Julie is now 5. The once doting father, Dan, had changed completely. I wondered what caused it. Was it because he knew I was aware of his affair? Dan was boldly enjoying his time with his mistress. This mistress was a piece of work, shamelessly bragging and belittling me, his wife.
Oh, tomorrow's your mistress's birthday, right?
You withdrew savings for a brand accessory gift, didn't you?
I saw her bragging about it on social media. Her family's wealthy, right? Her dad's a company president?
So why are you spoiling her? Are you being played?
It's creepy how you snoop around.
I got this information from a junior at Smith Foods, Bob, who had taken a liking to me and admired me. Dan was apparently proud of having a mistress. He blabbered and boasted about things I didn't even ask.
I heard you met her at her cafe at the station. She was so cute that you gave her your number, hoping for a chance. And she contacted you first, right? That woman, either she's not used to attention or she's overly confident. And she's just in her 20s, right? I doubt she's serious about you. I'm not a lost cause yet.
Dan declared defiantly, choosing to be open rather than hide.
So, you frequented her cafe every day, and it paid off. Don't you realize you get too obsessed with one thing and lose sight of everything else? I've always been devoted. Did you know your mistress has been harassing me? It's pretty serious slander. If I take this to a lawyer, it could be a legal case. She's posting on my social media, calling me horrible names, accusing me of not doing housework, of cheating. She's spreading lies. The other moms at Julie's kindergarten have seen it, and now they treat me like a pariah. If this continues, I'm going to take action. Reacting to such trivial stuff and getting all worked up? Are you a child? Stop making a fuss, it's tiring. I'm going to take a shower and sleep.
But the situation worsened.
Rachel?
It's me, Louis. Out of the blue, I received a call from Louis. It had been a while since I heard his voice, as I had left my job for family life. And Dan rarely spoke about work, let alone about Louis.
Louis! It's been a while. How are you? Actually, Dan has been absent without notice for the past few days. I was wondering if he's sick or something.
Dan hadn't been coming home for the last few days, and now he wasn't even showing up at work. But I couldn't bring myself to tell Louis about this embarrassing situation.
Well, maybe he's not feeling well. Sorry about that. I'll make sure he contacts the office. Are you okay?
Louis asked, his concern almost bringing me to tears. I wanted to confide everything in him. To have someone sympathize and comfort me.
If it's going to be a long absence, I really need him to let us know. Right now, Dan, me, and 3 others are handling a big project. He is the group leader. Honestly, we can't proceed without him. I'm sorry for the trouble he's causing everyone. I guess he'll have to step down from this project then, if it's holding things up. I'll pass the message to Dan,
I said, realizing the severity of the impact on his work. I felt helpless, knowing there was nothing more I could do. I tried calling Dan, though I expected no answer. My emails were being ignored, and the phone calls went unanswered.
Hello?
To my surprise, it wasn't Dan, but his mistress who answered.
Oh, it's his wife. Dan's in the shower, can't come to the phone. Do you have a message for him? Is my husband staying at your place? Yeah, he stays here most of the time, occasionally at a hotel, but mostly at my place. Are you keeping him from going to work? Are you the possessive type? Dan's planning to quit his current job for a new opportunity. What? I haven't heard anything about that. Maybe he can't be honest with you? He says you're scared when you're angry. He told me he's often left wandering the streets at night because you won't let him in.
She was spouting all sorts of things, lies Dan had probably told her to make it seem like their marriage was failing. A typical tactic of an unfaithful husband.
My father owns a business. Dan's going to take over as president soon. It's a great opportunity he wouldn't want to miss. Men want to be at the top, don't they? That's something you couldn't give him. I can make him a president. That's part of my charm.
Her father's business, a cafe, was just a small shop in front of the station. They were planning to expand into a chain. But I wondered if becoming president of such a business was really what Dan wanted, given his aspirations when we first joined Smith Foods.
Why don't you just file for divorce? Dan doesn't come home or go to work, so what's the point of staying married?
It's not that simple. We have a daughter, Julie. Are you the one keeping Dan from coming home?
What? No way. He approached me first, and I reluctantly responded. I'm with him because he listens to me. I wasn't planning to marry, but my dad was looking for a successor. Dan just happened to be there. He's lucky, isn't he? Getting to marry someone 10 years younger and become a president. Of course, he wouldn't want to go back to you.
I could almost see her smug face. I had checked her social media. She was the typical influencer type, flaunting her lavish lifestyle with branded goods. She's deliberately posting with the prices included. It seems like she's being supported by young women who aspire to be like Natalie.
Sorry to bother you again. Today, Dan's agent contacted me. He wants to resign. Probably hired one of those famous resignation services. It's kind of unmanly for him, isn't it? So, he's officially resigned, but what are you planning to do with him?
It's likely going to end in divorce.
Divorce? It's come to that?
The truth is, Dan doesn't plan to come home anymore. He's been at his mistress's place for almost a month, no contact, not coming home.
What? It's gotten that bad? That's serious.
Divorcing now, when my daughter Julie is just about to start school, would hurt her, wouldn't it? I tried to envision us getting back together, but it's impossible now. Dan has completely moved on to his mistress.
Dan has always been the type to forge ahead once he makes up his mind, not listening to others.
That's why I think he left everything behind to be with her, kind of like eloping.
If there's anything I can do, don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you. Since then, I often found myself turning to Lewis for advice. Even on the day I signed the divorce papers, I instinctively called him.
I'm disappointed in Dan. He always said he would never cheat. Aren't you about the age to start thinking about marriage? Don't you have someone special? No, not really. I think I'm okay with getting married around 40. I don't have any particular desire or ideal vision of marriage.
He was as handsome in character as he was in looks. Popular but never boastful or arrogant. I was genuinely curious about what kind of woman Lewis would eventually marry. Even after my divorce from Dan was finalized, I kept getting updates from my junior, Bob. He loved gossip and was known as Smith Foods' very own entertainment reporter.
I'm so tired. What's for dinner tonight?
Order delivery. I'm tired too. I heard that Dan, now married to his mistress Natalie, was struggling. He had been handed the reins of the cafe, her father's business, and was already facing difficulties. Dan had initially been enthusiastic about turning the business around, but he couldn't fully commit to the job, finding it uninteresting.
Tired? That's because you've been out and about, not doing housework. You wanted to do it perfectly and even stopped working at the shop, but in the end, you didn't do anything. I'm only 22, you know? My friends are still single. I'm not going to be tied down at home.
Their marriage was clearly not going well. 3 years after my divorce from Dan and his marriage to Natalie, they were still together, albeit unhappily.
Wow, here?
Julie was understandably surprised. I was even more so. Julie and I were standing in front of Lewis's family mansion, having been invited over. The house was enormous. "Hey, welcome." Lewis greeted us warmly, his charm just as evident in private. Meeting Lewis's parents and having a pleasant conversation with them, it suddenly dawned on me. "Your father is from Smith Foods, right? You didn't use the Smith surname. Was it to avoid being known as the president's son?" I couldn't just become the president overnight. I wanted to start from the ground up, to understand what our employees go through. My dad still says I have a lot to learn. I'm really sorry for keeping it a secret until now. No way, this is like hitting the jackpot. Lewis had recently proposed to me, and today I was meeting his parents to officially announce our engagement. "I feel so honored that you would marry someone like me, a divorced woman with a daughter." "Why are you being so formal?" "Just be your usual self, Rachel." Lewis lightened the mood, and we spent the day with smiles. Lewis had always been there to listen and advise me during the rough patch with Dan. Our growing closeness seemed inevitable. My biggest concern about remarrying was Julie. Would she need a new dad? Why does Lewis have to leave? Why can't he just stay with us? Julie had asked earlier. It seemed that her memories with Dan were being replaced by those with Lewis, elevating his place in her heart. Then one day, Julie called Lewis Dad and expressed her wish for him to be her father. That's how Lewis and I started preparing for our marriage. "What? Rachel and Lewis getting married?" That was Dan's initial reaction when our junior colleague Bob, a gossip lover, told him about our wedding. "When did this happen?" "Rachel doesn't like guys like Lewis. She used to say he's too skinny and unreliable. She needs someone like me who goes to the gym. We're complete opposites. Rachel's taste in men is so inconsistent. She just goes for any guy who says he likes her. She's not even that pretty, and she's got a kid, and she's in her mid-30s. A younger, prettier woman without a kid is obviously better. What is Lewis thinking? With his looks and brains, why a divorced woman with a child? What's his angle? They'll break up soon, maybe in 3 years. Me and Natalie?" Dan was evasive when it came to his own affairs. But Bob skillfully managed to draw the conversation out. "After all, even though it's a small cafe, people say the prices are high. The coffee taste isn't that bad either. That's why I've kept the prices high, but the customers don't seem to understand. They wonder why good drinks can't be cheap. But the scale is just too different. I used to work for Smith Foods, a big food company, you know? Dealing with a coffee for $5 each, that's just small fry. And about Natalie, are things going well with her?" Since the beginning of the marriage, there was an uneasy atmosphere, but it has somehow lasted for 3 years. "Things aren't going well with Natalie. She's young, with a wide social circle, and won't listen to me. Her parents just dumped the failing business on me and turned a blind eye. We're like a couple in name only. I tend to get obsessed and then lose interest quickly. Natalie can't leave me now that I've taken over her father's failing business. She should be grateful to me, but we'd barely have a marriage. No housework, no marital life. A housekeeper? Impossible, her family isn't that rich. Just because someone calls themselves a president doesn't mean they're wealthy." I was astounded by how freely he talked to a junior colleague. Hearing such complaints about his wife and work made me even angrier. Dan was clearly upset about my happy life with Lewis. He hadn't accepted the fact that I was remarrying Lewis. Then, 3 years later, "There's something important I need to discuss." I got a sudden call from Dan. It had been about a year since I last heard from him. "I'd like to see Julie at least once a month. I can't afford a lawyer, so I want to talk to you directly." His sudden interest in Julie seemed too convenient. He never mentioned wanting to see her in the past 6 years. Probably some trouble with Natalie made him think of Julie. I later found out that at this time, Dan was under a lot of pressure both at work and at home. "I'll have to ask Julie. She barely remembers you as her dad since you separated before she started elementary school. She's close to Lewis now.
If she says no, you'll have to accept that.
What does Julie say about me?
Why would she talk about you? You think too highly of yourself. When I asked Julie, she didn't want to see Dan. I told him her honest answer.
Is that really what Julie said? Or are you making her say that? Or maybe you're lying to me.
What can I do to make you believe me? After I said that, Dan was left speechless. For a while, there was no contact from him, so I thought he had given up on meeting Julie. Yet, today, he was lurking at the gate of Julie's elementary school. Julie was in a wheelchair, and Dan mistakenly assumed she was disabled. She had injured herself skiing on our recent trip to Switzerland and was using the wheelchair just until she recovered. But Dan made a very rude comment about it.
What's all this commotion?
Louis arrived in a luxury car to drop off Julie.
Why such a fancy car? Louis, really?
Louis is the son of the president of Smith Foods. He's set to take over as president soon.
What? Louis is the president's son? He never hinted at that. Why did he keep it a secret from us? Was it because he thought we would act differently around the president's son? That's just arrogance. Even changing his name. He should have worked at another company if he wanted to start from the bottom. If he doesn't have the guts for that, he shouldn't be president. Louis is too soft.
Dan ranted, seizing the opportunity to complain about Louis. Even when we were married, he always badmouthed Louis. What are you doing here? If you don't have business, please leave. I can call the police for suspicious behavior. You're just showing off because Rachel's here. You don't look good at all. I'll excuse myself then. I came to see Julie. She's my child, I have the right to see her.
I already told you, Julie doesn't want to meet you.
Whether that's true or not.
And I don't want her to meet you either. You chose your mistress over a still young Julie. I think you're unclean for that reason. You barely attended Julie's kindergarten events. Do you have any idea how lonely she felt? Do you know what she said the first time she wore her school backpack? She wondered if you would be happy to see her. After that day, she stopped talking about you completely.
I said, holding back tears.
I not only worked a day job, but I also worked as a web writer from home to ensure an income. I was so busy with housework that I hardly had time to talk with Julie. I made her feel lonely too.
So that's why you married wealthy Louis.
I didn't even know Louis's father was the president until we decided to get married. I was drawn to Louis's kindness and warmth. Even if he weren't the president's son, I would have married him.
You and Louis have been together since you joined the company as new employees, weren't you? This kind of thinking is pointless. He's just trying to find a loophole to gain an advantage because he's at a disadvantage. Now that I think about it, there are a lot of things that make sense. She just happened to start dating and then marry me when she was having a little fight with Louis. Maybe that's the real story, huh?
That's a far-fetched story. We have nothing to be ashamed of in our relationship.
Just a man chaser, huh? You always pick men from the same circle. Married 2 guys from the same PR department you joined. You should broaden your horizons.
And what about your marriage? Married a girl 10 years younger, abandoning Julie. She's probably tired of you by now. That's typical for you, isn't it? Happy just to win someone over, but then you lose interest. The classic once you've caught the fish, you don't feed it mindset.
This conversation is a waste of time. I'm leaving. Running away, huh? Figures, you can't have an equal conversation with me. I'm not interested in small fry. I heard your rice ball shop is in trouble. Good luck with your presidency. I have bigger business goals in mind than a $5 coffee. In the end, Louis had the last word. I got emotional too. Dan's greatest punishment for abandoning everything for his mistress was that he would never see his own daughter again. And as Louis said, Dan's cafe went bankrupt. Dan, now the president, was saddled with debt. He had been tricked into taking over Natalie's father's failing business.
Dan was deceived because of his own ulterior motives. Natalie, having found a new boyfriend, left him and filed for divorce. Then came a happy event for me. I was pregnant with Lewis's child. Though it was a late pregnancy, both Lewis and I were overjoyed. His parents were happy about that. And Julie was thrilled, which comforted me. I don't regret marrying Dan. After all, he gave me Julie, the greatest treasure.